Who doesn't love a podcast? Everyone adores a podcast. You may have your favourites. You may occasionally dip in and out of podcasts you've never even heard of just to experience them. But imagine having a £20 million Spotify podcast deal, as Meghan and Harry have done. That's what they had on the table, 20 mil, and somehow or other losing that deal because their Archetype podcast, Meghan Markle's Archetype podcast, has been cancelled and it's not going to come back for a second season. Spotify and the Sussexes released a joint statement saying they'd mutually agreed to part ways and they're very proud of the series that they made together. And I'm joined by royal commentator Caroline Aston. Hi, Caroline. Good to have you on.
Hi there, Vanessa. Lovely to be with you.
So 20 mil. It's got to be a hell of a good podcast, hasn't it, for 20 million smackers?
Yes, and of course there was a lot of debate at the time about the name of it, Archetypes. Well, I thought archetypes were examples of people, whereas really I think what Meghan was trying to talk about was stereotypes. People seem to be quite interested, Vanessa, but then, sadly, no second series, and Spotify are laying off members of staff as well. Could be a financial glitch here that makes the £20 million investment seem perhaps not such a good idea.
Were you one of the people who bestirred yourself to listen to Archetypes? I can't pretend I listened. I did read a review of it in the, I think it was in the Times. I think that Hilary Rose wrote a regular review. She was one of these people who had to listen because she had to keep on reviewing it. And each time she reviewed it, I think she said that, you know, Meghan, she used to measure how much time the Duchess of Sussex spent talking about herself and how much time she spent interviewing whoever she was meant to be speaking to. And that used to be quite a lot of the substance of the review. And it seemed that she talked a great deal about herself and not so much about whoever her guest was, and didn't really give them much of a chance to answer.
I would totally agree, and you'll recall on some of her public appearances at award ceremonies, keynote speeches, she's actually done just the same. There's been a lot about Meghan, her dreams, her future, and not always enough about the charity or cause that she's espousing, so no change there. But what's so interesting about all of this is that perhaps not that long ago, it issued forth from Camp Montecito that in future the Sussexes were going to desist from slamming the royal family. They'd said all they'd got to say, and they were going to take a new direction. Well, did they jump before they were pushed, I wonder? Because it does sound rather as though their ratings have been dropping down in the United States of America, and this would be very much in keeping with getting in first before it looked as though they'd been dumped in any way.
So do we think that means that somehow or other they've lost whatever razzle-dazzle, or some of the razzle-dazzle that they most definitely did have in the United States? They were glamorous, they were young, they were dissing the royal family, they were, you know, biracial, they were very, very, and they are very attractive and you know, royal. So what do you think it is that has tarnished their reputation there or lessened their ability to sell?
Well, I would say the little phrase one-trick pony might come to mind here, because if you think about it, the one thing that made them such catnip to these great streaming giants when they originally arrived in the States was the fact of royalty, or at least Harry's royalty and Meghan's by marriage, by association. But once you take that out, once they say, well, no, that's an end to that, we've done all we were going to do, the book's been published, where do you go from there? Do good quietly, perhaps? But, of course, don't forget the lifestyle of Montecito takes an awful lot of money to keep it going. So somehow they've got to replace any shortfall by generating income in other ways. So how are they going to do that?
I mean, it would be possible, wouldn't it, for them to streamline their finances? They don't have to live in a mansion of so many bedrooms, although, of course, Andrew and Fergie, Prince Andrew, Harry's uncle, and his divorced ex-wife live in a room with 36 bedrooms. So maybe that just is a kind of prerequisite of being a member of the royal family, that you feel you must live in an enormous mansion. Because imagine if they lived in a 6-bedroom house or a 7-bedroom house on a normal sized plot, how they could scale down their expenses.
Well, they certainly could, but then, of course, they wouldn't be able to, how shall we say, join that magic circle of Hollywood glitterati, who might well consider the Montecito mansion small and puny by their standards. It's all about appearance, and we all know how very into that, particularly Meghan, Duchess of Sussex is, particularly if you read Tom Bower's really very well argued book, Revenge, which is all about how Meghan has planned her life, planned her movements. And of course, this, I suppose you could say, the point they've reached was very much the cocktail cherry on the sundae of the life she wanted to create for herself. And now, just now, it appears as though there are one or two cracks appearing in the royal gilt on the gingerbread of Montecito life.
One of the things we hear, though, is that Meghan might be all set to revive her wellness. What is it? Is it a podcast? Is it a website? I don't know. Which I think she hopes is going to rival Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, doesn't she? And it was originally called The Tig after her favourite tipple.
That's absolutely right. Will she do it? Of course, she stopped doing that when she married into the royal family. But yes, I mean, it would be a remarkable way of marketing yourself, presenting yourself again. And yes, she must be well aware of the gazillions of dollars that Gwyneth Paltrow has generated with some of those oddly scented candles and so on, yes, and lifestyle issues that she's been talking about. So why not? Yes, perhaps bring back the Tig, but be careful you don't dig yourself an even bigger hole than the one you're starting to fall into at the moment. Who's advising them, I'd like to know? Or indeed, if they are being advised, the Sussexes, are they listening to it or preferring to plough their own furrow and only listen to other people if they're actually pointing them into the furrow they've already decided to plough? Interesting.
I mean, certainly there is royal precedent for shifting product, isn't there? I mean, I know that Fergie in her time has sold, I think, Wedgwood china and Weight Watchers or weight loss kind of products, books, of course, and a whole lot of different stuff. And we know that Peter Phillips, as in the son of the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, was definitely paid to shift a certain kind of milk, wasn't he? And say that it was royal milk drunk at Windsor or some such. So there is a kind of precedent for selling stuff. Do you think there's a possibility that Meghan might formulate ranges of clothing? Or we know she's dabbled with coffee already, hasn't she? So there's no reason why she wouldn't just broaden out.
No, absolutely so. I mean, she's interested in so many. She has an opinion on many things. And of course, one's always aware of her intense confidence in herself to carry this forward, which, of course, as we saw in Archetypes, as we were saying a few moments ago, really led to her talking all about herself and not much about the people she was interviewing. She's got great marketing capacity, but what about the figure we're not mentioning? Her husband, the Duke of Sussex, who still owes some books. That deal isn't complete yet with Penguin Random House. What's he going to do? And you know, Vanessa, for me, there's just a very faint historic whiff in the air of the fate that awaited the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, the former Edward VIII and his wife, who both, yes, wrote books, had books published very successfully, made a lot of money. Then there was the film, The King's Story. And then what? A nomadic life, drifting from one gala to dinner party to, well-heeled event after another. And that's a lot of life left yet for the Sussexes to live. So to me, they're at a crossroads here. It'll be interesting to see which road they turn down.
Do you think that with every week that goes past, the prospect of reconciliation with the King and with the Prince of Wales lessens? Or do you think with every week that goes past, Harry will miss his father and his brother more and there will be hope of reconciliation? Because I really did think that the Queen's passing was going to do it. I thought when they walked out together to look at the flowers and the tributes, they would feel such a bond of loss and such a kinship, thinking about how they had to walk behind their mother's coffin, that they would just stick fast together and be steadfast brothers. That's what I thought. I was certainly wrong. I was completely wrong. I did say it on the show, and I can't say I didn't, because I really did genuinely believe it. So I was completely wrong. But do you think that the prospect of reconciliation is receding daily?
Well, let's put it this way: if there was a far horizon, that word reconciliation would be on it. And how I love your big kind heart that when you saw them out and look at the flowers, that here at least was the twig of an olive branch being extended.
That's what I thought.
But I sadly, perhaps I'm a little more cynical, thought that this was a bit of a put-up job because the body language was so stilted and so difficult. Do I think there'll be a reconciliation? Perhaps one day. But as I've said many times, lose that little 5-letter word trust in any relationship, never mind one so publicly conducted, building that bridge called trust again. Being able to open your heart and soul to people you once loved and cared about, that takes an awful lot of doing. And let's face it, nobody, certainly a lot of Hollywood glitterati, really trust the Sussexes not to recycle anything that's done or said for financial gain. And that actually has been a major part of their downfall.
They still have a contract, don't they, to produce more documentaries, more programming, more books. Harry's got to churn out some more books as well. It must be quite difficult if you're simply recycling the same bit of your life that you've already talked about.
Yes, it's a bit like one of those recipe books, isn't it? 101 Ways with a box of mints at the end of the month.
Yes, it really is.
The material is the same, Vanessa, but you just have to keep putting different potato toppings, etc., on the top. I feel the problem here, really, for them is, I mean, we know that according to Harry and according to his ghostwriter, J.D. Muringer, 400 pages of spare are landed on the cutting room floor. So potentially you've got material for more there. We know that. I think the world is suffering from a massive dose of Sussex fatigue. We all need a rest, and perhaps the Sussexes do too.
Caroline Aston, thank you very much indeed. Have a great weekend. Lovely to have you on the programme.